Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our cozy little corner of the internet. I'm Pen and today I'll be reading chapters 4, 5 and 6 of You're Not Like Them by Luffy Gear 5. Just so you know, these chapters do have a slight warning for overstimulation. Chapter 4 really heavily and chapter 5 only really implied. Isn't just implied but it shows it too, but not as bad as chapter 4. Anyway, stay safe. Chapter 4. The next morning, Atsushi felt even worse. His stomach felt as though it was caved inwards, though he didn't have any appetite to eat. His skin was hot and clammy, sweat causing his hair to stick to his forehead. Despite the sweat, he was also cold, constant shivers running over his body. He gritted his teeth, pushing himself upright. His ears rang, skin sensitive against his clothes. And again, there was that high-pitched whine from the vents. Atsushi grimaced, not for the first time, hating his heightened senses. Too many times have pushed him into a sensory overload, and every time Dazai had come to cancel his ability to calm him down. Not this time. Atsushi scowled, pushing himself to his feet, ignoring the discomfort that was his body, and forcing himself to shower. The hot water was burning on his skin, the water so loud in his ears it became a constant drone. Atsushi stood there, forcing himself to stay calm as he washed off the clamminess of his skin before shutting it off. The sudden quiet was disconcerting, and he stumbled from the shower, having to grip the sink to dry himself off. A knock sounded from his front door. It was a jarringly loud noise, lashing his eardrums. Atsushi gasped, clamping his hands over his ears as he stepped out of the bathroom. The knock sounded again. Atsushi felt his breath picking up, dropping to his knees. "Stop being pathetic, pull yourself together." "Atsushi-kun, are you up yet?" a voice called. "Dazai." Atsushi gasped in a breath, stumbling over to his work clothes. He hurriedly put on his pants and trousers, belting them around his waist. The fabric was rough and scratchy. He winced with each movement it had against him. "Atsushi-kun?" Dazai called again. He gasped heavily. The lights of his room too bright. "Phone, I need my phone." "Atsushi?" Atsushi couldn't get his senses to focus. The loud noise, the colours, the fabric against his skin, it was too much. His body ached and it wasn't leaving. He curled up, pressing his head against the wall beside him, and ducked his head. Hands clamped over his ears. The world went blissfully quiet. His own thumping heartbeat and rushing blood filling his head, the only noise accompanying him. Atsushi pulled in a breath, listening as his heartbeat gradually slowed down. He could feel a bead of water trickle down his neck from his hair, soaking into his towel. He could feel his eyes shifting from the tiger's to his own, the confusion in his senses registering danger. A flare of alarms rang in his body as he felt a presence beside him. He flinched at a hand grasping his own. His eyes sprung open, adrenaline flooding him. Yet the world remained in its quiet state, quieter actually. Atsushi breathed heavily, blinking quickly to focus his eyes. Dazai sat before him, a concerned look on his face. "Atsushi-kun, are you with me?" Forcing a slow breath into his lungs, Atsushi nodded. "Sorry, Dazai-san." Dazai shook his head, keeping a hold of his hand. "I told you to call me when this happens." Atsushi nodded. "I know, I couldn't find my phone in time." Dazai sighed, sitting back. "You haven't had one of these for a while." Swallowing past his dry throat, Atsushi nodded. "I know, maybe it's just the unfamiliar environment." "Lie, you know full well it's because you're ill." He shoved the thought away while glancing up at the brunette. "Where are Octagao and Chusen?" "I told them to wait outside." "Did they see?" Dazai looked over for a moment before nodding. "I'm sorry, we didn't know why you weren't responding." Dazai glanced up at the two sets of footsteps entering the room. He felt a blush rise to his face, keeping his gaze away from the mafiosos. "I'm sorry." Chuya huffed. "Kid, with an ability like yours, I'm surprised you don't have this all the time." Atsushi frowned, looking up at the redhead. "What do you mean?" Chuya raised an eyebrow. "Your ability allows you heightened senses equivalent to a tiger, correct?" Atsushi nods. "So you can hear frequencies up to 60 kHz, smell things from 4 miles away, and even your sense of touch is heightened. I can't imagine what your eyes must be doing either, so I take it as a fucking compliment." Octagawa scoffed. "Can't you control it yet?" Atsushi sighed, the relief he felt at Chuya's words quickly squashed by Octagawa's. We should get going. I'll be ready in 5 minutes. The three looked at him before nodding. Dazai cautiously released his hands, studying his face as he stood. Atsushi smiled, nodding despite the rush of information his body has received as his ability returned. Thank you, Dazai-san. Atsushi watched as the three left, carefully unfolding himself from his position. He suddenly realized his bare abdomen, and blushed even more, hurriedly slipping his shirt over to cover the multiple scars on him. Yet his body was still achy and shivery, random spikes of pain launching through his chest. Atsushi huffed at the annoyance. This couldn't get any worse. Chapter 5. I take that back. Atsushi's head felt stuffy, and he also felt like his senses had been working in overdrive the whole day. His body felt exhausted, and he hadn't even done much. He was lucky none of the others had noticed as he forced himself to act normally. He shook himself mentally, looking up as the man entered the room. His wife, who sat with them, beckoning him over. The two whose son had gone missing only a week ago. Again, the attack seemed random, and there was nothing unusual. The only difference was there was a recording of the attack on the traffic camera. The woman nodded at them. I'll play the recording now. She held out the remote, pressing one of the buttons. Atsushi stiffened his attention, ignoring his body's discomfort. The recording was during the daytime, and judging by the time of the screen, it was just after school ended. It showed a child, no more than 8 years old, walking along the street. He wore a rucksack that looked too big for him, his steps bouncy as he walked, a pack of sweets in his hands. There was building works beside him and a red Vauxhall patched back to his left. Atsushi felt the hairs on his neck raise as the boy approached the vehicle. Within the next few seconds, the car door had opened and the boy was pulled into the vehicle. There was a short struggle before the car drove off. A series of shaky breathing filled the air. Atsushi looked over to where the parents sat, the husband comforting his wife, tears in his eyes. The man looked up to meet their gaze. The police already tracked the car. It was found in an abandoned car park. Atsugawa frowned. Which car park was this? I can give you directions if you like. Thank you. Atsushi glanced at Chuya, who sat with a frown on his brow. The redhead shared a look with Dazai. Atsushi looked between them before returning his gaze to the screen. We might have a lead. Atsushi swallowed harshly, pushing away the tension in his shoulders as his senses yet again overwhelmed him, only this time triggered by the vibrations of the car underneath him. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus on the world scrolling past his window. The car park isn't too far from here, Chuya commented, searching the outside. It's better we start checking if there's anything around here that we can see along the roads. Atsushi nodded, hoping to keep his discomfort hidden. Luckily, it hadn't taken too long to reach their destination, and none of the others had called out about seeing anything unusual. Atsushi clenched his jaw as the engine finally silenced and the car stilled. It was a relief. His senses didn't usually do this, not like they were recently. It didn't help that his body was feeling weak and tired either. He flinched slightly as the others opened their doors to leave the car, and he hurriedly followed. The sudden motion causing a lightheadedness to flood him. His eyes wavering, but he straightened his back, following Dazai around the space, Chuya and Okutagawa just behind. Looks like the police have already removed the car from here, Chuya commented, looking around the area. It was an old car park, the white paint on the ground faded with potholes littering the tarmac. Dazai crouched down in space, studying the ground. Any track marks or evidence would have been taken by the police too. He frowned, standing. The brunette glanced around, pocketing his hands. Atsushi watched him, his body suddenly feeling hot. Eyesight starting to blacken. Come on, stop it. Oi, Jinko, Okutagawa called. You sense anything here? Atsushi could barely reply. He did, in fact, smell a scent, but it was weak and not one he had smelt from anywhere they had been so far. But his body was betraying him. He felt his breathing pick up, eyelids start to drop. He stumbled slightly, body going weak. Dazai-san, His legs suddenly collapsed beneath him, eyelids dropping shut, leaving him in blackness. His hearing was the last thing to fade, the panicked shouts of the others ringing in his ears. Chapter 6. Dazai ran over as Atsushi dropped bonelessly to the ground, his head bouncing on the hard tarmac. Atsushi! He fell to his knees beside him, pulling the boy upright. Atsushi's head lolled about, body limp. What happened? Dazai, we should take him back to the hotel. Chia knelt beside him, pressing a hand to Atsushi's forehead. He's burning up. I didn't even realize. Everything was telling me too. His sensory overload. Junko didn't say anything. Atagawa scowled. Chia shifted, nudging Dazai away. Follow me in the car. I'll take him as fast as I can. Dazai nodded, releasing his grip and watching as Chia carefully lifted Atsushi into his arms, the two glowing red as the redhead used his ability before lifting into the air. Dazai had hurried to the car, Atagawa close behind. Why didn't he say anything? Chia landed before his hotel room, glad that he had left the window open as he usually did. He flew inside, rushing to place Atsushi down on the sofa. Atsushi was hot in his arms, still having yet to come to. Come on, kid. He carefully laid him down, rushing to the bathroom and wetting a towel with cold water. He then hurried back, pulling the boy's tie off and braces, quickly pulling the shirt down his arms. He paused for a moment, staring at the multitudes of scars and old burns covering his body. He glimpsed them earlier, but he didn't see the true extent. Shaking himself mentally, Chia tucked the cold towel under Atsushi's arms and over his chest. The redhead was about to collect another towel when Atsushi roused. The boy was breathing heavily, a feverish look in his eyes. I'm sorry, he gasped. Chia hurried back, pressing a hand to the boy's forehead. It was still hot. It's fine, kid. You should have told us about this before it got this bad. I don't know how you hid it for so long from us. Please don't hurt me. Kid, why would I? Chia froze, looking at the boy. He took in the burns, the scars, the fear in his eyes. He also recalled seeing those scars on Akutagawa's body. Who hurt you? Chia asked, holding his gaze. Did Dazai hurt you? Atsushi's eyes filled with tears. His breathing picked up as his eyes rolled again. Oi! Chia shook him. Oi, kid, stay with me. Atsushi went limp. Fuck. At that moment, the hotel door clicked open. Chia stood, hands fisted. He stalked around the sofa, eyeing Dazai as the brunette rushed in. Chia swung his fist, punching him across the face. Dazai stumbled back slamming against the wall. What the fuck? Chia grabbed him by the collar. The scars. How did you get those scars? Dazai frowned. Chia, this isn't... Did you do that to him? Dazai went silent, face blank with shock. Chia gritted his teeth, ignoring Akutagawa closing the door behind him and going to attend to Atsushi. I thought you'd change. Chia. Dazai sighed, shoving his hands away and straightening to his full height. No, they weren't there because of me. He had them before we met him. They're from the orphanage, from the headmaster. Chia glared at him. You better be telling the truth. Why do you care? Fuck you, why shouldn't I? Dazai stared at him, an unreadable expression on his face. I've read up on him, Dazai. He went from one hell to another. If I can save him from yet another, I will. Chia-san, Dazai-san, he's come through. The redhead broke off, glancing at Akutagawa before hurrying over, a quiet Dazai at his heels. He knelt down, shaking his head. He did that earlier. He didn't stay conscious for very long. Atsushi stared up to them, gaze shifting over them. I'll be good, he huffed in a shallow breath. It's cold in the cage. Please, I'll be good. I promise. Cage? Chia took the opportunity to get another cold towel, rushing back to dab the boy's forehead. Atsushi flinched at the touch, his eyes shifting from the tiger's to his own in quick succession. Dazai was quick to hold one of his hands, helping Atsushi calm down. Chia lifted his gaze to the brunette, narrowing his eyes in warning before returning to try and cool Atsushi down. It took a while, but eventually he cooled slightly, calming down before falling asleep. Chia sat back, allowing Akutagawa to take over. He looked over at Dazai, the brunette's gaze pinned on Atsushi. What did he mean by cage? Dazai didn't even look at him as he replied. He was kept in a cage in the basement of the orphanage. Most of the abuse he got while he was there was in there. He spared him a glance. I went there to find out more when he first joined the agency. They used to chain him there. How big were the chains? Akutagawa asked. Dazai was quiet for a moment before he shook his head. For a child. Akutagawa replaced the towel over Atsushi with another, glancing at the door as Chuya and Dazai left. Atsushi had barely improved. Whatever he had drained him. He was weak and feverish, and only panicked when he awoke from his ability, forcing him into a sensory overload. Why can't he control his ability yet? Akutagawa didn't want to admit it, but he was worried. Atsushi was like a younger brother to him, and although they went on missions often, he'd never seen him like this. Akutagawa's irritation and anger about Atsushi's lack of control was more to cover his concern. He knew this and admitted it to himself, but it didn't help. Akutagawa absently refilled the cup of water from the jug on the ground, ready for when Atsushi next came to. He shifted his gaze to the boy, frowning at his open eyes. The heterochromatic irises reflect the light, bright with fever. Akutagawa pushed to his knees. Oi, Jinko, drink some water while you're awake. Offering the water, he watched as Atsushi continued to stare at the ceiling. Jinko, take the cup. Atsushi slowly looked down at him, holding his gaze. Now he was looking. Akutagawa could see the fear they held. Atsushi shook his head. Jinko? Atsushi's eyes widened and he slammed a hand over his mouth, slipping off the sofa with a quiet thud. Akutagawa pushed him off, steadying the other when he wavered. What the fuck are you doing? Atsushi just pressed his hands to his ears, ducking his head. He never said a word. Akutagawa let him be, shifting to sit a small distance away from him. He didn't know what Atsushi was seeing or hearing, or if what he was seeing or hearing was real at all. It took a while for Chuya and Dazai to return. The noise the two made as they entered the room caused Atsushi to curl up tighter. The two looked over at him before looking at Akutagawa. What's wrong? Chuya asked. Akutagawa just shook his head. He's scared. He won't say anything. He's hiding, Dazai concluded. He sighed, moving to the ground to sit beside Atsushi. He's hiding to protect himself. Okay guys, that was chapters 4, 5 and 6 of You Don't Like Them. I really like this fic. These were pretty short chapters, so I'm doing 3 of them as well. It's not going to be as long as the last video, but hey, I like it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to take care of yourself, and I'll see you guys later. Stay hydrated, bitch.